So I did V school probably like a year ago.
Okay.
And just about finished up, and then I took some time off, and now I'm back at it. I'm also a TA there.
Oh, cool.
So
Yeah, I think I remember seeing your name somewhere on Slack. I think it just like popped up somewhere. Um, cool. So we've got a nice little intimate group today. I figured it was going to be kind of small because of the holiday. So this will be fun. So the topic for today is regex. So have you guys used regex before a lot at all?
No.
Cool. Do you know, have you heard of it? Do you know kind of what it's for?
Shortcuts?
yeah, I have heard of regex before.
So regex is, I've heard people say regex, I've heard people say regex. I call it regex out of habit. I honestly don't know what's correct, although it's derived from the term regular expression. So regex, I can't even say it. Regex, I guess, is closer to the original, but to me it sounds like some sort of weird pill that you take for stomach problems. That's just me.
I used to call it Regex.
I like that the best. Regex. Hey, Danny.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. Cool. So the goal of today is to try to help you guys not be afraid of regex. I've students that I used to teach were always intimidated by it because it is kind of weird. It's got like a really strange looking syntax. It has kind of a weird mystery to it. But I just want to show you some ways that it's really useful. And I want to try to demystify some aspects of it. I'm not like a regex master. There's some people who are like really good at it and know a lot about it. I would call myself I don't know, I can get by with it. I know how to use it. So that's the goal today. So does anybody have any questions before we start?
I feel like it's kind of simple and then it gets really hard.
Yeah, just like everything in coding, right?
It's like the basics are pretty easy and then it gets really tricky when it doesn't do what you think it should.
Right. And yeah, that's been my experience. Sometimes I have to read the documentation a few times to kind of fully understand what's going on. There's still some things that like I said, I don't consider myself like an expert, but I am fairly comfortable with it. So hopefully I can at least bring you guys up to where I'm at. So what's interesting about regex is that it's not unique to JavaScript. It's kind of like its own system, its own syntax, and most major languages kind of just implement it. So JavaScript has a regex implementation via the regex constructor function. And like Python, it has its own implementation. Java, I believe, has its own implementation. Basically, regex is kind of a standalone thing that languages independently implement into their syntax. So in JavaScript, let me share my screen here. So in JavaScript, where's my code? There we go. So regex is implemented on top of this regex object. So if I want to create a regex object. It's really easy. I can just say new regex, which stands for new regular expression. Okay, so this is kind of the basis for everything in JavaScript as far as regex goes. So there's nothing fancy about this. It's just an object that's generated from the constructor function, just like, just like everything else. So we're gonna break this down a little bit. So a regex object, the way that I like to think of it is it's just a thing that you can use to ask questions about strings. That's all it is. So it's just a way for us to ask questions about a string. More specifically, ask whether a string follows a certain pattern or a certain template. So it's a pattern matching tool. And there are several methods that allow us to do this. We're not going to talk about all of them, but there's the most common ones are the test function and and then every string. So if I have some string, it has a match function, which you can also use regex expressions with. So I can either test strings against a regex expression, or I can use a string to match against regex expression. These are effective. They're not identical. They're not like the same thing, but they're used for they have similar goals. So the goal is to check whether or not a string follows a certain pattern. So with that in mind, it's time to look at what the actual syntax of regex is. So does anyone have any questions before we go into that?
And you use like a dot replace a lot of times, right? With the string or.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Dot replace is very, very useful. You can do you can say, stuff like, hey, find me every instance of an A and replace it with a capital A or something.
Cool.
Yeah. Or sorry, not that. I should rephrase that. That doesn't mean every instance of A. That just says match the string with the pattern of this, which happens to just be the letter A. Replace that with A. Let's see what that returns, just for the hell of it. There it is. And notice that it only works for that first letter. So we'll get into this. That's just a little teaser. Okay, so the syntax of regex is very simple, actually. It looks kind of confusing, but it's built upon some very, very simple building blocks, like Legos. And the place that I always tell people to go to learn regex is this place called Regex 1. If you go through this entire tutorial, you will feel confident in your regex abilities. And to be honest with you, this is actually a really fun exercise. I had a blast when I went through this. It's just like a bunch of puzzles, but they're way easier than like doing leet code or something. Like it's kind of I don't know. I found it fun, so I highly recommend going to Regex 1 after this to practice the actual art of regex and get comfortable with it under your fingers. So this is the best resource I've found out there. Okay, so there's a couple ways. So in JavaScript, there's a couple ways of creating a regex expression. You've probably seen the double forward slash with the regular expression inside. This is the most common way of defining a regex expression, although this is the equivalent. Okay, those are effectively the same thing. Okay, so the only difference is that if you're gonna this, you basically put in your template string for how you want your regex pattern to look. This, you're kind of just defining it explicitly without using quotes. But basically whatever goes in the quotes here is what you would put in the forward spaces there. Make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the difference between doing, making a string doing this versus, actually, let's do a number. So I can say, hey, let's create a new number based on that template, or just do the number, right? So these are effectively the same. Hey, Emily. All right. So this is how you define a regular expression using regex syntax. You can also do it this way. Unless you need to make a dynamic regular expression, meaning that this is like some variable, it's not as common to see regular expressions defined this way. And that would be kind of a little bit more advanced use case if you have like a dynamic template that needs to change or something. So we'll not worry about that today. So regular expressions are very straightforward to begin with. So like I said, a regular expression is simply an object that we can use to ask questions about a string, namely whether it follows a certain pattern. So what you're really doing is when you're asking the question, hey, does this string match the pattern ABC? What that is really asking is, does the string that I'm using have a substring that follows this pattern? Okay, so I'm going to do a series of questions here. Okay. Okay, quick quiz. Which one of these is true?
First and the last one.
Okay, why?
Because the ABC is in the first one and ABC is in the last one at the end of the string.
Yeah, so why not this one?
Because ABC is not connected. It's either AA, BB, or CC.
Exactly. So just so we can see this, and you don't just take my word for it, let's put these through the console and see what we get. True, false, true. Okay, so that's the first thing. So this is the first lesson about dot test. As you would expect, probably, it returns a Boolean value. So it's a Boolean that says, hey, does that string match this pattern? So this is one of the most basic patterns you could have. It's literally just the string. It's literally the characters that we're looking for, the substring that we're looking for, and then the string, does it contain that substring? Now, when you don't have when you're just doing characters and stuff, it's as simple as that. Okay. Now, sometimes we want to check whether or something contains, or sorry, I should say, sometimes we want to know whether a pattern matches, or whether a string contains like several options. This is fine, but like, what if I want to ask the question, does this string contain an A or a B or a C, but not necessarily all of them? We now have a different, we have to introduce a slightly new syntax for that. So if I ever want to ask the question, does a string contain one of something, we do this. So I want to say, hey, do you include A, B, or C? We wrap our options in square brackets. So now we can ask, or now we can use the test function to say, we've got A, B, C. A, Z, Z. All right. So again, to put it on you guys, which one of these are true?
A.
What? Oh, like that is an option A. Okay. Any other ones?
Everyone except the last one.
Everyone except the last one. Okay, let's see. See if you're right. Boom, you're right. All of those are true except for the last one. Because what this means is, what this pattern is asking is, does the string contain A or B or C? Not all of them in a row, just one of them. It's just a simple or. Okay, now I'm gonna do something a little different. So we're gonna go like this. Okay, for this pattern, in fact, there's an easier way to do this. I'm just gonna do this. And then I can just, I don't have to keep copying this over and over again. All right, just like the SATs in college, which one is true? Anyone want to take a guess?
All the above.
Find out. Wrong.
I failed.
So let's we're gonna look at this one thing at a time. So it looks like the top two are false. This middle one's true. The last one's true, and then this one's false. Okay, so this expression is looking for a substring that is either an A, B, or C followed by exactly A, B, C. Okay, so if we're looking at this string, we know it's false because, okay, so it does contain an A. Okay, cool. But then that only, so that works for that first part of the pattern. It certainly contains an A, but then it's looking for explicitly an ABC afterwards. Okay, so this would work. See, that works. So in fact, this is actually looking, it's got to be at least 4 characters. There's no way for this to match unless there's 4 characters to begin with. Does that make sense?
Because
Yes.
it once it matches, then it moves on and doesn't count that match in the next match.
Sorry, say that one more time.
So once it matches on the first parameter,
Yes. When you say parameter, you mean this?
yeah,
Okay.
then it moves on. So it
Yes.
needs to, it doesn't include that letter that it's matched on in the next.
Correct. Exactly. So basically, you can think of this pattern as just comprising a series of individual checks. So we go and it's checking for a substring that matches every single one of those conditions. So just out of the gate, we know that it's got to be one of those 3 followed by 3 letters. So there has to be, the string that we're testing has to at least have 4 characters. There's no way around that. Secondly, that substring has to contain one of those letters and then followed by explicitly, exactly, ABC. So basically any one of these would work. Any string that has those in it is gold. Like you're good to go. Those are all going to be true. Oh, sorry, that one is not true because there's no D, right? If I had put a D here, then we'd have no problem. Okay, so now what's nice is that it doesn't matter what I have after this, and it doesn't really matter what I have before this. It's searching for a substring with that pattern. So this, in theory, should match. Yep. There we go. So it found the substring right there.
What would you use that for?
This particular expression, or just generally?
Just generally speaking, like how could I use that if I'm testing something with Regex? What am I looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So usually what you're doing is you're investigating a string and asking whether it follows a certain pattern. And the kinds of patterns that are really common, for example, are URLs. Or I mean, there's 1,000 things, but like just I'll list out some things that I've personally used these on. One is checking URLs. For example, I can ask whether or not it's HTTPS or HTTP. So that's that would be probably one of the most basic questions you want to ask is, what's the protocol of this website? Well, you can ask simply by simply going HTTPS. And notice we suddenly have a problem. You can, with these forward slashes, because forward slash already has a meaning, you can use the backslash to escape out of the typical meaning of that. Okay, so now what I can do is I can ask the question, are you HTTPS? Or are you not? Now, it's not going to tell you, this right here isn't going to tell you whether you have a valid URL. We could write one to do that though, but you know, for example's sake, let's say this is just a bunch of garbage, right? Like, but let's see what we get. Oh, duh, I gotta keep forgetting to put my console logs in here. Okay, true, false, false. So this is one case where it's like, hey, all right, cool. This is an HTTPS site. Beautiful. These ones are not. So that's one case. Another case, I've used this in my own work, which is checking for not only the protocol but the origin of a request. So I wrote a server that needed to only provide access to certain sites from certain domains. So when the request is being made from the client side, in the request headers, there's a value called origin. It's called the request origin. And if that request origin doesn't match a pattern that I want, then for security purposes, I wanted to not serve it any resources. The goal was to whitelist certain domains. So what I did is I wrote a regex that looked something like this. I can be like, okay, I care about anything coming from this domain. And so now I'm only going to get, it's only going to work when I actually am checking for my domain. What did I'm missing something. Oh, there we go. There we go. And what's nice is that because it's only substrings, I could have, whatever my endpoints may be in my URL, it doesn't really matter. It's still going to be true. I can still just check the domain based on the URL that's being passed in. Another thing.
Is that kind of how you do your cores stuff? Make sure that.
Yeah. Yep, that's how I implemented it. Like I built a website for my friend, and we included I built an email server for him, and we didn't just want anybody to be able to send in requests to his API for sending emails, because he had like a contact page with his email and stuff, and so I made it so that we only whitelist his site, so only requests that are coming from his site are allowed to the server. So that's a really common use case. Another common use case is checking for routes. So, for example, it's kind of the opposite of this, whereas instead of checking for like the domain or whatever, I want to check that am I on the dashboard page? Well, let's see if dashboard /login or something, right? Like this could very well be an endpoint on your site. And depending on where you are on the site, you may want to do things. Maybe you want to only show certain icons in your nav bar based on what route you're on. So if I'm on the I don't know, the payment page, then I don't want to show some icon. If I'm on the contact page, I don't want to show some things. Oh, but I'm on the login page, so I'm going to want to show the login form or something. It really could just depend on your use case, but this is a really helpful way of doing that. And to be honest with you, the vast majority of cases where I've used Regex, I haven't had to do anything crazier than this. Like there's been a few cases where I had to get a little tricky. But usually it's not, it's as simple as this. Does that kind of help answer your question as far as the use case for this?
Yeah, it kind of gives me a better idea of how it's used.
Mm-hmm. And so this is a good segue for the next thing. Is a lot of the times you want to check if a string matches a certain pattern in the context of like a form. So, for example, a phone number or an email. Those all have very specific formats that are kind of hard to check for. So for example, checking whether something is a phone number actually is a little tricky. So Regex can actually provide a really easy interface for asking those kinds of questions. So that brings us to some other syntactical things with Regex. So the first thing is the dot syntax. This means match any character. Asterisk means match any character as well, but it has there's something different about it. And I honestly, it means 0 or more repetitions. That's what it is. Whereas this is the any character. So literally anything. It's a wild card. So if I have something like this, that means that it doesn't matter what this is. It's going to be true. That can be a number. It can be, that can be a number. It's going to work. So it's just a wild card. The asterisk is slightly different. It means 0 or more repetitions of something. So if I go here, and again, you kind of have to get a little tricky. So suppose I do this. Well, let's see what that means. Okay, so that's true. D asterisk ABC. Let's try that. Hey, look at that. That also works. Oops. Okay, this just means any number of repetitions of that followed by ABC. So that works as well. There's infinitely many patterns that could work with that, but that's what the asterisk means. So that allows us to do phone numbers fairly easily. Well, actually we need, emails. So we'll do, so an email we know is something
.com
followed by an @ symbol followed by something followed by a .com. Okay, so let's see if that works. So test@test.com. Let's see if that works. It doesn't work. Well, let's maybe see why. Anyone have any guesses as to why that doesn't work?
Is it because of dot after the @
Well, let's see. I'm gonna try this. Hey, look, that worked. Does that give you a clue?
Do you need the asterisk thing instead of the dot?
Say that again.
The asterisk instead of the dot?
So It doesn't have to do with the asterisk. It's the fact that this only means one character, right? So now, so I could do like something like this, but then this is a problem because now I'm saying, okay, if I'm checking this email, but it has to have exactly 5 characters in the domain, like that
Right.
isn't going to work, right? So we have to have a way of kind of dynamically knowing, like we have to be able to say any character, but also any number of characters. Like we have to get like kind of really crazy right now. So you can use the plus sign to be like, hey, any number of anything before that. So let's see what happens there. So I'm going to do test@test.com. I think, yeah, there we go. So that works. If I leave out the @ symbol, then we probably will have a problem. Yep, right there. So this seems to be fairly reliable. Let's see what happens if I leave out that period. Oh, false. Okay, cool. Let's see what happens though if I leave out everything after the @ symbol. And there it is. We need at least something there. So this isn't perfect, but it's pretty good for checking .com emails. It's a little bit too lenient because you could have like literally any character here. And this should probably still work. Yeah. Like that's not a real email. But in most cases that'll work. So does that make sense? Dot is the wild card. Plus sign means, and if you look in the
Can
the
you
Regex one,
specify, like, say you wanted anything, but you only wanted like 3? Can you specify with that plus sign?
sorry, say that again.
Like, say, sorry for the noise. Hey guys, in the bathroom. Could you specify how many, like, you know how you said dot is like the wild card
Mm-hmm.
plus any amount of? Could you specify what that amount is?
Yes, yes, you can. The syntax is with the curly braces. So if I wanted to, let's say, I'm trying to think of a case where you'd want to say a specific number of something. Oh, okay, like a web address. I want to make sure that there are exactly 3 W's before the, now I could of course just do that, but for the sake of argument, I want 3 W's dot google.com. Okay, let's see if that works. Boom.
And for checking emails, you'd want that too after the @ symbol, right? Like just one @ symbol, so you can't do multiple.
Yep. Yep. Let's so to go back to that example, we know that it's got to have at least anything.
Oh, I guess you could just you did just specify the actual @. Never mind.
Right. So like it's redundant to do one because literally
Totally.
that's the thing. But you could do but it allows you to do like you could have like a minimum of something. So like I don't know, at least 1. And then I think that should nothing to repeat. Oh, okay, so that doesn't work. I thought that you could combine that. Yeah, so this does most of this takes care of most cases. So obviously that's fake. Here we go. And back to that, beautiful. So, however, it's usually looked down upon to have an email that has like, you know, these kinds of things, right? That's not typically, you're never going to see an email that looks like that. The problem is that our regular expression is being very, very lenient. So Regex gives you a nice, easy way to kind of narrow down a set of characters. So you could, for example, try to like take into account individually all the different characters that you want to omit. So that brings us to the square bracket syntax. So suppose, so like we said earlier, so let's go back to the simple example. So here's ABC. That lets us choose between A, B, or C, right? So that's true. B is going to be true, and C is going to be true. D is going to be false. Okay, well, let's think about some other ways that we might flip that. Suppose I want to check for anything that doesn't have A, B, or C. Well, that is a different question. And that would be a pain in the ass to try to explicitly put out all the characters in all the, like in all the languages, anything that's not A, B, or C, right? Because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. That's also literally everything except A. I mean, you can see how this would be unwieldy. So there's a syntax to say, to narrow down a set of things that don't match, and that is with the caret key. So if I want to say, hey, match me a string, match me a substring that doesn't have A, B, or C in it. Hey, check it out. That doesn't have A, B, or C in it. And if I try to put an A in there, or a B, or a C, I'm now going to get a false back. False. It doesn't matter what combination I do this in. Boom, false. But literally anything that is not an A, B, or C is going to pass. So that's really useful. Now, sometimes that's not enough though. Sometimes I need to narrow down within a range. Okay, so saying that anything but A, B, or C, while that's helpful, and in a lot of cases, that's all you need, sometimes you need to be somewhere between, like this is still really strict. Sometimes you need to be somewhere in the middle where you're not being too strict, but you don't want to be too lenient either. And you can do that with the range syntax. And the range syntax is saying anything between a range of characters. And it uses the ASCII, I think it uses the ASCII code numbers to define like a range. So, or at least under the hood. So let me show you what I mean. If I want to say everything that's a letter, okay, so that we can talk about that in different ways. Saying I want to match any string that has a letter in it is similar to the question of saying give me or match me the string that isn't a number and isn't a special character. That's one way to narrow it down. But those are still very vague or at least broad patterns. So this is why a range is so useful. It allows us to really be, it allows us to be, what's the word? It allows us to live in that, in that certain domain that we care about. And this is the syntax, just use a hyphen. So if I want to say, give me anything that's a lowercase, or give me anything that's a letter. Boom, A through Z. Now this is lowercase, keep in mind, that is lowercase. Okay, so that will mean that anything that I do, as long as it's a lowercase letter, it's gonna pass. That's awesome. So here's a question, is that gonna pass, yes or no?
No.
Okay, why do you think so?
Because the 3 is not included in that range.
Let's see. Oh no, it passes.
Why?
Why? Okay, there's a really easy explanation. It's because it's just looking for a substring. Remember? So let's say I do this. I'm going to replace that A with a 3. Okay, so now I'm going to ask the question again. Does this string contain a substring that matches the pattern A through Z?
Well, this feels like a trick question.
No, it's not a trick question.
No, it's not going to pass. It looks like there is no substring. It's just the string 3
Yeah, boom. You're right. So it does not pass. That's because, and this is what took me a while with Regex, was the idea that, okay, all it's doing is looking for a substring. So this is just asking the question, is there a letter in the string that is one of A through Z? So the fact that this string has things that aren't letters, that's not enough. It's asking a more specific question. Are there characters, or sorry, is there at least one character that matches that pattern? That's what Regex is asking. It's looking for the first match. It's not asking, hey, does this string only have characters A through Z? That's the wrong way to interpret this. The correct way to interpret this is to say, is there a substring that matches that pattern? And a substring could be one character, it could be multiple characters, it could be the whole string, but it's the minimum amount to pass. And in this case, regardless of what comes after, you look at this first character, oh, that's going to pass because that matches the pattern. Now, if I were to put like an @ symbol here, well, is this still going to pass? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, and why is that?
Because there's a lowercase t.
Yes. Yep, exactly. It's going to go through and it's going to eventually find something that matches this pattern. Okay, so that is, I think, the most confusing part about this bracket notation is this is literally checking one character. It's just checking if one character happens to be in that range.
So if you match and wanted to replace that character, you would only replace one character, basically the first
Correct.
match that you come across, which would be the T.
Correct. Correct. And now there are ways to say, hey, replace everything, which we'll get into a little bit in a minute. So, all right, so how does this tie into what we were talking about earlier? So we have this question where we want to check an email, but we want to narrow it down so that it's only characters, or sorry, we want to narrow it down so that we have a variety of characters here, any amount, followed by an @ symbol, followed by something, followed by a .com. Okay, we know that that's too lenient. So what we can do is, instead of saying anything, we want to narrow it down into letters. So what we can now do is say, okay, I want a range from A to Z. I don't care how many of them. That's what the plus sign is saying. It's saying any number of characters, as long as they're in the range A through Z, followed by a .com. And then we could do the same restriction on the first part of the email. So this is now saying any number of letters or any number of characters, as long as they match A through Z, followed by an @ symbol, followed by the same thing, any number of characters between A through Z, followed by a .com. So let's try that. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, or let's do one that passes. Test@test.com. Okay, let's try that. Sweet, so that passed. Okay, well, that's fine. However, we might have a problem. What if I have admin at alpha beta.com? All right, what's our problem now?
Capital letters.
Yeah. So, okay, now we have a new issue where our range is too narrow. We need to expand our range to say all characters regardless of their capitalization. But again, we can use ranges for that. So another way of writing a range, in fact, this is how you write a range from A to Z lowercase. How do you think you write a range uppercase? Just using those brains of yours.
Capital A.
Boom. Yeah,
Dash.
it's actually as simple as that. So let's see if that works. Hey, it passed. Make sense? The way to
So
read this.
if you had a number in there, admin 1, would that pass or fail?
I'm so glad you asked that question because that was literally the next thing I was going to do.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. That means that you're really good at segues and anticipating the next topic. So, what does your intuition say?
No, it would not pass.
No, it's not going to pass. So we can ask ourselves a question. Well, how might we, if we know how to specify a range of letters, how do you think we might specify a range of numbers?
Said 1-0.
Boom. So it'd actually be 0 through 9.
No, yeah.
Boom. And there may be domains that I can't think of any domains that have numbers in them. I don't actually know if numbers are allowed in a domain. But we definitely know that could, of course, have numbers. So that right there allows us to, that expression right there allows us to say as many as we want. There's no limit to any characters as long as they fall within the range A through Z or A through Z capital or 0 through 9. Since this is such a common pattern, Regex actually provides some built-in shortcuts for explicitly these things. So instead of saying A to Z like this, we can actually just say backspace W. And that's the same thing. It's an alphanumeric. And you can read some about it here. So W means alphanumeric. So that simply means 0 through 9, A through Z capitals. Does that make sense?
Is there one for all characters?
Yes, that's what the dot is, the wildcard.
Oh, okay, I forgot.
Yep, that's just the period. So, and then there's also, if you use a capital W, that is the opposite. So that means instead of anything A through Z cap and uncapitalized and 0 through 9, instead of an alphanumeric, it just means anything that's not an alphanumeric. So that would be, you know, your dollar signs, your percentage signs, your commas and stuff like that. So that would pass if I, you know, that would be weird. But if I try to use a normal one, it's going to pass, or it's going to fail, because those are alphanumeric characters. ABC, ABC, 1, 2, 3. That way you can kind of get an idea. Okay, so it's false. But if I go back to this, it's all good. We pass. Beautiful. So looking at this, at first glance, that looks really confusing and complicated. But now, after seeing this, I hope you guys can see how this is actually really, it's very straightforward. The way that you read this is match anything that's a character, or sorry, match anything that's an alphanumeric. Match anything that's an alphanumeric as many times as you want. So it's matching any number of alphanumerics, followed by an @ symbol, followed by any number of characters within the range A through Z, capital or lowercase, followed by a .com. And this backspace simply means to escape the normal meaning of a dot, which is the wild card. So if you want to use an actual period, you have to use the backspace to escape from the default meaning of a period. Does that make sense?
Totally. Can I ask one really annoying question? Because you definitely
Hell yeah.
why, but I popped in and you can just slap that capital A through Z right after the lowercase a through Z.
Yes, this literally means so just like doing let me do a simpler example. So anytime you have bracket notation, whatever you put in there is simply saying one of those characters. Putting the range in there, treat that range as just a representing a single character within that range. So like, for example, in fact, I'm really glad you asked this question because, in fact, let's apply this to this case. So .com is not, .com is not the default. Well, it's common, but it's not necessarily the only match that an email could have, right? You could have .net or .io or .whatever, right? So we can now, if we put it in brackets, oops. What this is now asking is one of those letters. Well, okay, that's not exactly what we want, because that would mean that that would match, and that would match, or that would match, right? So actually, sorry, I'm getting off track. The answer to your question is a range is just a stand-in for one character within that range. So if you have multiple ranges next to each other in a square bracket, that just means anything in this range or anything in this range or anything in this range, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So my biggest question was, it doesn't really read anything between that little z and big A. That's just kind of like the next thing is.
It's just the syntax, yeah.
Okay, cool. I got it.
Yep,
good.
like it's just matching one character that's A through Z or another character that's A through Z capital.
Cool.
This plus sign is what makes it so dynamic. It's saying any any amount of a character that matches one of those things.
Okay, my last annoying question.
Go for it. Those aren't annoying questions, by the way.
Was the forwards, the backslash in front of the little W. I came in when you explained the W. I got that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I know that you said that was to escape a certain something, but when it's used within that bracket, does that denote anything, or is that just that particular syntax for the W?
Sorry. So what this means, backspace W has a very specific meaning. So before we had it like this.
Yeah, no, I got,
right.
I'm cool on the W.
Right. But that's what the backspace W is.
Oh,
It's you have to look at it as one unit. If you just put a W, then it's literally just looking for the W character. This is what makes it no longer just a W. This is now making it any match to a alphanumeric character. Is that cleared up?
yep. But it's
Cool.
also a way to escape a certain
Yeah, and in this case, it's kind of doing the opposite, whereas before a period means, like, so for example, in this case, the period normally means wildcard. It means match any character.
Right.
And when you put a backspace on it, it now means literally match the dot.
Yeah.
However, when you have a W by itself, it literally means a W. When you put a backspace backslash in front of it, you're now saying, no, this W now has special meaning. This is now a special W. It's an alphanumeric.
Okay, so if you see that slash within a bracket, it doesn't mean the same thing as outside of the bracket.
Right. It has nothing to do with whether it's in or outside of a bracket. The bracket is just a separate thing. Because for example, I could do this, like that has the same exact meaning in terms of like this still means alphanumeric. And in fact, I wonder if that actually
before the slash W, how do you know that's not escaping whatever is I don't know how to ask my question.
Are you asking like how does it know where to stop looking for the escape?
I guess, because aren't you using that backslash as an escape to a certain extent from?
Yeah, you're using it. Really, Regex is smart enough to know that it's only going to apply it to the following character.
Cool. Say no more. That's great.
Yep. So notice here we have. So I actually thought this might work, but it doesn't. So this is now false. Even though those are all alphanumerics, that's false. But if I put brackets around it, oh wait, what am I missing? Oh, duh, because I took that out. Okay, hold on. I may have just tripped myself out. Okay, so in this case, putting the brackets there is actually redundant. Because there's only one choice. So putting it in brackets doesn't change the fact that you're still asking the same question, which namely is, does this string have any number of alphanumerics followed by an @ Now I could do something like this. I don't know, we'll put like colon, I don't know. So now you'd have a case where it's checking all alphanumerics or a colon. But if you only have one item inside of brackets, then it's redundant. There's no reason to use them in that case. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is the ability to change that back to how it was. Okay, so the ability to ask another kind of question, which is a little different than the other questions we've been asking, which is simply, does this character belong in a certain range? Like, is this a set? Does this belong to a particular set? So in the case of everything prior to the @ symbol, we're asking the question, do all of those characters fall into the set of alphanumerics? Everything after the @ symbol, does each character fall into the set of either capital or lowercase letters? Those are really good questions to be able to ask, but sometimes you have to be even more specific. For example, it doesn't seem like I have a very good way of asking the question, is this a COM? Is it a net? Is it an IO? Is it something else? Right? So like based on what we know, it doesn't like this doesn't seem to cut it, right? COM, net, IO. What are some other ones? There's org, co, UK. Okay, so what's wrong with this? Is this going to match? Is this going to do what I want it to do?
No, it's only looking for any one of those characters.
Right. So that means that CMT would be perfectly valid. And
Can you
that,
write it without the brackets?
so I could, but now I have the separate problem of now it's too specific, right? It's looking for literally that string.
How can
So
you separate it?
So the question is, okay, how do we separate that? So there is a way, in fact. So what we can do is we can group expressions together. So I want to group COM together. Okay, so all right, let's see what happens when I just do that. Okay, I'm going to take that out for just a sec. Let's see what happens there. I'm going to put this back as this. Okay, so that works. So it doesn't appear that there's any difference between that and that. Okay, what the real power of this though comes when we want to check this pattern, which is explicitly COM, but we want to say, I want either COM or .NET or org. So now it's doing exactly what I want. So if I do net, this should work. Beautiful. Now, if I try some weird combination of the two, like C and G, like what we had before, it's not going to work because, again, everything that's coming after this period, it's being checked against these as single groups. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Totally.
Cool. And I hope that's intuitive because I find that to be pretty intuitive to follow. So I don't know, there's what IO. So just for good measure, let's try that guy. Beautiful. All right, that works. So this right here does, welcome back, Danny.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Oh, good. So this right here allows us to kind of really achieve what we would want with a proper email checking pattern. So you could, so now you could put this into one of your forms. You could, have a button, you click submit, and then you can check the value that the user inputted into their field, and you can check it against this value, this regex. And if it's false, you can prevent the form from submitting and display an error message, like this format is not correct or whatever. And you can do that with phone numbers too. So a phone number would look something like this. It totally depends on the country. Different countries have different phone number formats, but let's say it's just, a typical area code, the typical US phone number. It would look something like this. I'm trying to guess this off the top of my head, but I believe it would simply be any number. So D for digit. And again, if you look at if you go to this site, which I highly recommend going to, it's really fun. I had a lot of fun doing this. So D means any digit. Okay. Capital \capital D means any non-digit character. Oops. So that's helpful. But okay, so we're dealing with numbers, so we care about digits. So we're going to say, okay, well, a phone number always has a digit, a digit followed by 3 digits, followed by, and then it's always wrapped in parentheses. And we gotta escape, or let's put the parentheses in after. And then, so it goes the country code. In our case, it's 1 for America. Let's actually do that. So it's 1, and then area code, and then you've got the normal ones, the first 3, followed by 4 digits. Okay. So let's test our phone number. Oops. I'm going to call that email so it's a little easier to follow. Okay. So phone test. So if we look at this, it should be 1-801-555-5555. That's not my phone number, in case anyone was wondering. Check it out. That's true. Okay, now that's not exactly the format we want. There's usually these guys, right? So what if we wanted to make it look like that? And in fact, I don't.
It's only on the 801 part, right?
Oh wait, oops. I don't know, man.
Making sure.
I just work here. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that looks right. Does it look right? I forget though. Do you know if the country code has a hyphen before the parentheses?
I don't think so, but
Okay.
I don't
Does
know.
it just that? I don't know.
No. I think it has a hyphen. Do it.
Okay, I'm just gonna do it. Anyways, whatever it is, we can make our pattern match whatever we need. So in this case, okay.
I don't think 1 is a country code. I think a country code is like +44.
Oh, you're right. Oh, you're totally right. You know what? I'm not even gonna worry about the country code. We're just gonna do this guy. I'm overcomplicating things. So, all right, here's a typical phone number, right? It's just our area code and then our numbers, and we're not going to worry about an extension, although we could if we wanted to. But let's just stick with the basics here. So, our Regex expression. So, I'm going to ask for some help here. How might we do this? How might we match a pattern to a phone number based on what you know so far?
Well, we want the numbers.
Just gonna do these just as a.
Well, I guess the question is, do we want to we're trying to validate or just get the information we need?
We want to check whether these phone numbers are valid or not.
I think we're just looking at like the format, right? Like 3 numbers and
all we're looking at. We're just care about the format. That's the only thing Regex can do. We can't really do anything more. We can't do anything fancier than simply asking the question, does this string match this pattern?
What is that bracket? What is that bracket called with the it's not a curly bracket, but the other one?
Square bracket?
Parenthesis?
Yeah, not the square bracket, not the
curly braces.
The circle one.
The
just normal parentheses.
Oh my bad. That's all, you know. Yeah. So would it be what? It'd be parentheses.
Okay.
/ D.
Okay.
And then out of the parentheses, backslash.
Or wait, backslash or hyphen?
Yeah, copies hyphen. Okay, so hyphen.
Okay.
Backslash D3.
Okay.
Or curly brackets 3.
Okay.
And then hyphen backslash D curly brackets 4.
Cool. All right, let's see if this works.
Dang,
They're all false.
I did it wrong.
You're close. You're close.
Wait, I think
Not your-
Katie knows this. Can I try?
Go for it.
Would you have to put, wait, let me ask this first. Do the square brackets by itself do anything? Is that,
No.
okay.
Square brackets with nothing in it or only one thing in it are redundant.
I know what I'm missing.
Yeah, what is it?
It's curly brackets 3 inside the first D, right next to the
Okay.
first D.
Okay.
Not the money sign though.
Oh, whoops. I mean, I've been doing a lot of templating strings lately. Like used to doing that. All right. Does that look right to you?
I think so.
All right, let's see what happens.
Do we need to escape the like the parentheses and the dashes?
Boom. So let's try with just the parentheses. There you go. So the dashes you don't need to escape because they're not in square brackets. If a hyphen is not in square brackets, it's treated as just a hyphen character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that is one caveat with the square brackets is that if you know that you have a range of something, you got to put that range in square brackets.
What did we escape again? I'm a little lost.
The parentheses. So, because remember, parentheses have a special meaning. It's a way of grouping.
Looking for it is specifically looking for a separation.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All
So we
right,
could use those parentheses. We could group each of the 3 sets of numbers by adding parentheses around them.
We could. It wouldn't really help us in this case, though. We could do this, for example.
Yeah, okay.
I think this would work. Let me double check based on my. I've been wrong before, but I think this should work. Okay, the only problem is that when we don't have a choice with escaping out of the actual parentheses, because we literally do have to check for the character of a parenthesis, right? There's no way around that. So we do need to do this. And then inside I'm grouping 3 letters together. So I don't know if this, I don't really like that. It looks confusing to me, but it passes.
how do you know where to put those backslashes on when you're getting out of the parentheses? Because I know she do one before the parentheses and one before the last one. How do you know?
Right. So what this is saying is, so if you ignore everything after, if you ignore everything after that, just remember that, okay, all I'm trying to do is I'm testing. I know that my first character has to be a parenthesis.
Right.
Right. So, but because I know that parenthesis has a special meaning in regex, and I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for just literally the character. So I know right off the bat, okay, that's got to be.
So right before you declare the character, you need to put the backslash in there so it doesn't read it as another character or another meaning.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then, so just I spaced this out so you can kind of visually see how I'm thinking of this.
Right.
Is between my literal characters, I now know that I have to have a grouping using normal parentheses of 3 numbers. And that's how I know where to put these guys. So it eventually looks like this. And this to me looks ugly and it's really hard to read. I certainly prefer this syntax. This is a little more in my, this is how I think of it.
But the groups are kind of handy if you wanted to access a specific group, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's where those could come in handy if you wanted to like do something with the last 4 only.
Correct. Yeah, and that's where you can do some more fancy stuff using the dot match function, which I won't go into today, but you can do some really cool stuff where you can like loop through a string using the dot match, and you can like replace values, and you can even apply functions as well. So you could like loop through a string at all the grouping parts, replace it with something based on the output of a callback function. It's really amazing actually what you can do. It's really cool. But that would have to be a different lesson because that is quite a bit more involved than what we're doing here. But anyway, so this is a perfectly acceptable regex for a typical phone number. So beautiful.
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so, because I think it is pretty dope as well.
The first thing that came to my mind was when you're doing passwords and they say, hey, you need a certain amount of characters, you need 12, you need numbers, and you need everything else. That's the first thing I was thinking of when I was
right. Yeah, regex is really common on form validation. It is good to be aware of the limitations. For example, there's not really an easy way to check, like you can't really enforce the length of a string with regex. You can implicitly, in a sense, like, for example, you know, you can enforce that a string at least has, you know, X amount of characters if you were to do like D4, or sorry, not D4, W4. But so that tells you that it's at least 4 characters. So that can be helpful. So for a basic form validation, if you're checking for the length of a password, that could work. Although you're probably just better off using the length property of the string, because I mean that you have that too. But for the sake of argument, let's say we test ABCD, and then let's do an ABC. So
can you use regex and like queries too?
Like what do you mean?
Like if you're trying to check for a certain type of query?
Oh, like if you're like filtering a list with a search word?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So let's say, and so that's actually a great question. So suppose, I'm gonna clear some space here. So suppose, now this is, I'm glad you asked this question because this is where the regex constructor is handy. So we know that taking the string from a search value is dynamic, right? Like you don't know what it's going to be ahead of time. There's no way for the program to know. That's why it's a text field. You're getting input from a user, and you can't really predict what that user's going to type. So the question is, okay, how can you take a user's input and check what they typed against some list of items, right? So for example, let's say I've got some list, okay, ABC, and we'll do DF, GHI, LMN, I don't care anymore. Okay, so here's my list of things that I'm searching for, right? and I've got some keyword that I know is a string. Okay. Now, I don't know what that is ahead of time, right? Like I don't know what the string is. So we'll do a fancy for those of you who are curious how to make a random string. It's kind of fun. So I don't know what my keyword's going to be, but here's my math.random. Okay. And then we will string it with this as a hex number, and that'll give us a random enough number. Let's make it a little bigger. There we go. So if you're curious what this outputs, it's going to be a random number in hexadecimal or base 16. So it'll have letters in it. So there you go. So I don't know what this is going to be ahead of time, right? I have no idea what that's going to be. So the question is, how do I take that keyword and then use that as my pattern match? So the way to do that is, we'll do a little, let's call it search. Okay, so we know that we're searching the list, and we know here's our keyword. So what we can do is we can create a regex expression using the keyword. So what we'll do is we'll just create a regex expression using the constructor, and we'll pass the keyword into it. And then what we can do is we can just return whether or not regex.test, we need to find in the list item, and then we just need to ask the question, hey, does that item match the thing? And we'll get a list of things back. It is very unlikely that, actually, I like that, but that's not going to get me it's very hard to predict. Let's say that I'm looking for, well, okay. So I'm going to say I want to look for anything that has a D in it. Okay. Notice this is just a string. Okay. For now, we're just going to assume that that string came from an input. So ignore this for now. I got a little ahead of myself. So if we're looking at this, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a breakpoint in here, and we're gonna look at exactly what we're getting here. So let me do. Debug it. Okay. All right. Why isn't it running? Access. Oh, duh. Okay. Now we can. Here we are. All right. So I just called it with the D string. So what happens when you use the regex keyword, or sorry, the regex constructor, what it does is it generates a regex object using that string. So what we end up getting is this object here, and you can, as I hover over it, see how it's just a D with the forward slashes surrounding it. That's effectively the same as, it's almost as if we had written it with the forward slashes. But remember, this is supposed to be coming from a user input. So there would have been no way ahead of time to know that that was a D, for example. So this is how you can take a string, convert it to a regex pattern, and then use that pattern against a list of items. So let's step into this function here. And now we can ask, okay, we're on the very first item. Okay, we're at ABC. Okay, cool. So we're going to pay special attention to the return value of this function. False. That's because there is no D in ABC. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, too late. I should have stepped out of it. Oops. Okay, there we are. So it found 1. This one. Okay, well, let's find one. Are there any that have, let's do like multiple ones. Let's put an F there. Okay, let's try it with F. Let's say someone types in an F. And I don't really need the breakpoint anymore. There we go. So now we just got our list of everything with an F in it. Pretty cool. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions?
No, that was cool.
Just taking it all in, I kind of came into that after you.
All good.
I'm half making dinner at the same time, so apologies.
All good. All good.
All about that.
So, yeah, all about that multitasking.
So
right.
I think I got it, but keyword is basically you're just subbing the first string and then the second string, like each different keyword. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So I say, okay, so one final cool little thing. So I'm going to use this little function here, and I'm going to now say search, and we'll do a keyword. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call this keyword function. Okay. But I'm going to put brackets around it. It'll look a little weird. But if you remember, this was, at the end, it'll look like brackets followed by whatever random string we get followed by brackets. And if you remember, brackets in regex means one of, right? It means a member of a set. Match a character that's one of the items listed. So that means that if we provide a string to the search function there, it's going to then theoretically, I've never actually done this before, but this should work. What we should get is a regex pattern that's saying, hey, match me the string that contains any one of those values. So here's our keyword right there. Okay. And then our regex now looks like that. So now it's asking whether or not anything in our list matches that pattern. Now, if you put two letters in, it doesn't matter. It'll just treat it as one. It's not like an error or anything, but it's just redundant to put in multiple letters between. But again, this is a random string generator, so it's bound to happen. So now what we should get is anything that has either a 1, an E, a B, an A, or a 2 in it. So hopefully, if my theory is correct, I should get this first one, I should get, is there anything else with the, oh my God, there's, oh, and then okay, this one and that one. So I should basically get everything except for line 7 and 8. Let's see if that happens. Oh, I gotta run that again. Huh, I'm not getting anything. Wonder, like I said, I haven't actually tried this before, so I expected it to work, but sometimes I get surprised.
Why are you? Oh, never mind.
Go ahead.
Nope, just answered my own question.
Nice. Don't you love when that happens? Okay, so this is, okay, so I expect this to be I should get ABC, right? So I test that against that. That should be true. Why would that not be true? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, okay, great. So now when I get to the end, oh crap. It's a new character every time. So
You got
it's a new random word every time. So I have to but okay, so it was working. I'm just trying to, I just want to, so let's look at the return value of this guy. Okay, so that doesn't have anything, but that's because my keyword is, of course, all numbers. Let's try that one more time. I just want to see it with some things in the array. Come on. There we go. All right. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, F. Let's look at what our keyword was. BDAD3. Nice. It's going to be my new username. So
last time it didn't work because it regenerated and it shot all numbers. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah, because this keyword's new every time. Because I'm trying to mimic, someone typing. We don't know what the value is going to be. So we're just generating a regex dynamically and then testing our strings against that. So it just so happened that the last couple of times there weren't any matches, but this time I've got a match. So our keyword is anything in that string. So B, D, A, or a 3. The D is just a duplicate, but we don't need to worry about it. So anything that has a B, D, or an A in it, or a 3 is going to match. And that's what we got. We got ABC and we got DEF. None of the other strings match against that pattern. So that's what I expect to get from this. Make sense?
Yeah, it sure does.
Cool. Well, I hope that was helpful, guys.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So do you have to do anything? Sorry.
Very good.
Do you have to do anything special to, I don't know why I thought like regex was like a language or something. I don't know, but it seems like it's just kind of more like a tool. Do you have to do anything, or can you just use it in JavaScript?
Yep, it's just built into JavaScript. It's not native to JavaScript, but it's every major language nowadays has regex implemented within it. Like Python has. No, it's this is about as plain JavaScript as it gets.
Okay, but the Regex Reg, do you have to use that to like invoke it or anything, or is that just?
No, this was I was doing this as an example to show how you can create it, but yeah, normally you can just do this, and it's gonna work.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
There's also the global, or the G. Is that needed here, or I've just seen that used?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in this case, it's not needed. But really quick, what it means is it's kind of like it's a way of configuring the regex on how to apply the pattern. It's a little bit more advanced, but let me see if I can give you a quick example of what I mean. So earlier, let's say we have a regex that looks like this. Okay. And when I check to see if that matches, okay, cool, it works. But let's say that I want to run a replacement, right? Like I don't want to test for anything. I just want to say, hey, replace all instances of pieces of the string that match a certain pattern and replace it with something else. So for example, I want to take this string and replace, so this is where we define, the rules for checking the match. So let's say I do A, and then I want to replace it with capital A. Okay, so this I'm not even using regex. We're gonna get our string here. Of course, if you have multiple characters, it's only replacing the first one, right? I want to do a replace all. Okay, well, that's where things get a little tricky, because it's like you can ask yourself, okay, well, what if I use a regex expression? And you can say, okay, well, okay, nope, that doesn't work either. There's a flag called the global flag, and you can put it right after the last /. And this means, to be honest with you, I don't know exactly how it works, but it lets you do more recursive checks. So this is saying not just the first A, or I should say not just the first match, but all matches. So as you look at this string, there's clearly more than just one match. There's more than one location where this expression or this pattern matches. Let's see what happens now. Boom.
Very cool. So that's kind of like your match all patterns kind of idea.
Yeah.
But not exactly that.
Right. And so like, for example, let's say I have like,
could you think of that as like a for any, for like any lowercase a? Or
yeah,
any?
I think so. Yeah, you could think of it as for any match, or actually be even more accurate to say for all matches or for each match. Right.
Cool.
So like, for example, here's a match ABC, and I want to say replace that with ABC. There you go.
Cool.
And if there wasn't a match, like for example, let's say I put a D in there, I'm just going to get whatever I had.
And without the G, you would just get the first three.
Right. And let's say I do that. I broke my ABC pattern. Now it's going to work for the first one, but not the.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. So that's really useful for replace. It's also useful when you call .match.
Well, what Danny asked, if you take the G out on the string and put back the B, and then take the G, the global G out, would it just do the first ABC?
Yep.
Ah, okay, cool. Thanks for letting me see that. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. So yeah. So even though this is saying, replace. Yeah. The way to think of this is saying without the G, all you're saying is replace the first match with this. Whereas if your pattern is this, this means replace all matches with that. So it's almost doing a loop. In fact, it is doing a loop.
Yeah, cool.
Straight up. So this is cool. I mean, I use this all the time. Not even kidding. This is like super useful.
Can you give one simple real life example then?
Yeah, so I did. So a lot of the times you have to, a lot of the times you're formatting. So for example, I have data that looks like this. Okay, it's got an ID, right? And then it has some type, and it looks something like this. Okay. So in the database, this is great. This is a perfect format for that. But when you want to display that on a page, you don't really want to do that, right? You want to make it look as if it were, you know, text, like normal text. So what you might do is something like data.type.replace, like, you know, let's say this is I'm building a website and I want to display this data. I don't want to display it like that. I want it to look somewhat pretty. So I might have something like this with this. Oh, I need to console log this so we can see it. And in this particular case, the G flag is actually redundant. There's only going to be one match. See, so now you can display that on the screen in a pretty elegant way.
Okay, don't erase it. I'm going to write this down.
Erase it. No, I'm joking.
Caesar.
Just funny.
And there are some things you can do, such as, so on the next line, you can even, I believe you can even get pretty fancy and you can put a callback function in here. If I remember, I haven't actually done this in a while. I remember if it's with this or match. Let's take this console log out. Match. Okay, so just for the hell of it, let's see what this does. Okay, so notice this replace here when I'm calling it. Here's my match. I can put a callback function into this replace that will then give me that substring, which is really cool because then it lets you transform it however you want. So like this is fine. You know, if you already know ahead of time what it's going to be, then just do that. But if for whatever reason you need to like, you know, check that for something or use it for something, you know, maybe you need to process that in some way. I don't know.
What did it do, Ben?
All this does is so if you look at this console, the console log down here, let me clear this so it's easier to see. Okay, so I'm just running this dot replace. Right now I'm just console logging the value that's brought in here. So you're going to see immediately what it actually is. Okay, so what you're seeing is the match. So for example, let's say it has something.
Oh, it's just matching the S with the sum type. I got you.
Yeah. So if we look at this, look at what we got now.
Okay. I see it. I see it.
Yeah. So now look at what happens if I say, okay, match any alphanumeric globally. Wait, what the hell? I didn't expect that. That should be everything. Okay, that is kind of baffling actually.
Because of the dash or the underscore?
I don't, that wouldn't make sense because there's still other characters in there.
Isn't D all digits?
Oh, duh. Thank you. Oh my God. Okay, there we go. So notice that was the S, the very first match. But if I put the global flag, let's see what happens. Check it out. Now it loops through it.
Cute.
Yeah. So this is cool. It allows you to, this essentially becomes a for each on all the matches, which I think 90% of all developers don't actually know about this.
Wait,
So
how does it with just the S?
because it's the match that gets put it into that gets invoked. Sorry, this function is invoked every time there's a match. So if you use the global flag, then it's going to call this function for every match that it finds. So since I'm using such a broad pattern, it's literally going through every.
Because it's still the same string. It's
Right.
still iterates through the whole string because it matches.
Exactly. So
Okay.
this is like a fancy way of doing a for each on a string, which is kind of cool. I don't know about you guys, but I think that's dope.
Quick question, Ben.
Yeah.
How much longer is this session going to be?
Usually it's just until people either get bored or get tired or both.
Okay. Sorry, yeah. You recording this? So where can I look up the rest of it? Because I'm about to.
It's the VSchool blog is where the links to the YouTube videos are.
VSchool blog. Okay, dope. All right, man. I appreciate everything. I got to run. I'm sorry.
Cool,
but
man. Oh, no worries.
interesting.
This is pretty informal, so I usually just go until people either leave or I have to leave. It's usually an hour and a half, 2 hours. So
yeah, I like this. I wish I could stay a little longer, but I got a jam.
no worries. I do this every week. So
all right, I'm gonna be here next time. Thanks,
alrighty, man. Yep.
All right, later, guys.
Hi.
Word. So
Can you walk through how that loops just, I'm sorry, I feel really
good
right now, but I had it totally.
Mm-hmm.
You were doing it with the replace some type with some type.
Right, and it showed it once.
Really throwing me off.
Yeah. So this is I'm gonna write it this way so you'll be able to see. So think of it in terms of matches. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna simplify this. So I'm just going to say, here's my string ABC. Actually, you know what? Even simpler, AAA. Okay, and we're going to. Oh, and let me. I'm gonna console like this so we can see it. So okay, AAA. We're gonna replace. So here's the key. If my pattern is this, if that's my pattern, first of all, how many does that pattern match with this string, first of all?
Yes.
Yes. How many times?
3.
1.
Yeah, just one. Why only one?
Oh, right, because it's just the first A.
No. It's because of the flag. I'm not using the G flag. This is just a normal regex expression. So it only, once it matches once, it's like, all right, I did my job. Peace out.
So it matches the first A and it's like, good.
Right. So now if that was a B, then it would still match, but it would still only match once. It finds that second A and its job is done. Okay, so without that G flag, this matches once. If it didn't have an A in it at all, it wouldn't match at all, right? So the question is, so if I do this, so the question is, how many times am I going to see this value on the screen? Like, how many times is this going to get console logged?
Once.
Okay, that actually surprised me. I thought it was going to be just once. Oh, I think it's because when you don't use the flag. Huh, okay, that just threw me for a loop. I might have to read into this a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So, I'm sorry. It's because there's also other stuff that it packages inside of this callback. It's not just there's other stuff that it gives you too, in addition to just the character. So sorry, that I should have pointed that out before.
And S really just represents each match. So S could be called whatever.
In fact,
you want.
I should call it match.
Yeah.
It's a string, but it's a match, right? So we're just checking, okay. And then what we're getting is, at the end, we're getting the result of, I know why. Oh my God. It's because I had this other console log here. I'm sorry. That was so confusing. Okay, that's what I expect. Sorry. I got this confused. I got this mixed up with the dot match. I thought that this was doing something that I didn't expect it. It's doing exactly what I expected it to do.
No,
I had an extra console log.
I was hung up on that S for whatever reason. So.
Yeah. So just think of it as the match. Okay. So notice how this is only getting called once. Even though technically it looks like it matches 3 times, it's only getting called once. And that's simply because regex by default only checks the first match and then it goes home. However, if I flag it, now it's going to loop through the whole string for every match. Okay, so then what we should get is that. Now it goes through 3 times.
Yes, I see this now. So
cool. Now, what happens if I were to change my pattern to do this? Now, how many times do you think it'll match?
Either 1 or 2, but no more than.
Yeah, it just does once, because once it goes, because
second, like AA.
Yeah, because what it essentially does is it loops at the end. It loops at the beginning of the next match. So if your match has 2, or if your pattern is like 2 characters, then the smallest amount that it could leap each time is 2 indices.
Okay, so is that why the S looped over, because some type started with the letter S?
Yeah, it's because before I was being really generic with my word. Or maybe no, I had, what was it? It looked like that, right? And that's because there's only 1 match. And if I did S, again, there's only 1 match when I take that G out. In this case, there's no match, so I'm not going to see this at all.
I actually think you had the alphanumeric one.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I had that. So again, I'm going to see this only once, because while the pattern is being more forgiving in terms of what it counts as a match, what matters here is how many times it's matching. No matter how lenient this pattern is, it's only going to find at most one match. But if I put a G here, now we get some interesting things where it's like, okay, how many matches are there as we go through the string? At each point where a match is found, we now loop until there's no more matches, starting from the previous match. So in this case, well, the first match is going to be A. Second match is A. And the third match is A. So therefore, we've got 3. Does that make sense?
Is there any difference between the dot, like the dot match? Do you get a callback in the same way, or
Yeah,
why would you use dot replace versus dot match?
Replace to me is a lot more, well, they do different things. Replace is like literally for replacing strings with other strings. They have different functions, but the interface is also very different. So like if I do a string and I say, match, and I put in a matcher, and the difference is that this actually returns an array. So just so you can see what this gives you. So console. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, quite a bit different. So the first item is it gives you the string that you checked, or sorry, it gives you the string that matches. It tells you the index of where that match was found. In this case, obviously, it's the first one because they literally are the same string. Input just is the string that you gave it. And then groups are if you're using the G flag, it'll show you more info. So for example, let's just so you can kind of see, let's say I do ABC and I want to match A. Well, let's see what we get. Okay, so now we get our match, which is just the A, right? It's not, we're no longer matching B and C, we're only getting A. And this is the input, there's the index that it happened at. That's our original string, no groups. Okay, what happens if we do a G and then do a match? Okay, now so this just is a weird thing to do with match. I'll have to look this up. I'm not sure why it only gives you, I think what it does is it gives you an array of all the matches. So for example, if I do 3 A's, it's going to give me all of the matches it finds. So there they are. And this can get kind of crazy if you have like, I don't know, all the alphanumeric characters. Okay, there's that. That's what we get there.
And that's where you kind of see the group option as well, where if you had a group within a match,
right? So for example,
you could identify that specific group.
Yeah, let's say I get really crazy and say, hey, I want a group of any words or any alphanumeric characters. Let's see what that gives us. Okay, it's the same. Okay, and then there's by grouping it in terms of the single letter. Okay, we get 3. Okay, cool. Let's try that. Trying to find one that's like weird. Oops. Okay, I can't really find one that's weird. But anyway, so match just gives you the biggest difference is that match gives you back an array with some information about the match as well as the things that matched. And then replace obviously just it actually like does something, like replaces.
Got it. Okay. Very
items
cool.
in a string. Yeah, replaces characters. And one thing to notice in this case, like whatever your return value is going to be your is going to be the value that gets injected to that index, or whatever the return value is of this function is what the match is replaced with. So this is really good for if you want to like capitalize the first letter of a word or something, like, I don't know, be like test. That can be like, hey, find me all of the find me the words, the grouping of words, and return uppercase plus match 1, 2, lowercase. Oh, that's supposed to say slice. So that is a cool,
Nice.
clever way of capitalizing the first letter of every word in a sentence.
Do you really need to lowercase right now, or
I guess you're right. Technically, no.
or uppercase? Then you would.
Yeah, you're right. So like, I guess it just depends on what you're trying to do. So yeah, good call. You don't actually need to do that. But yeah, so this is a cool, tricky way of. Yeah, so you can use regex to do some like really like clever, tricky things that are kind of hard to do otherwise. This replace is like the coolest function. It's like, I think, one of the more underrated and like unknown functions. It's pretty dope what you can do with it.
Okay, explain one more time match, like the way you're using it, like dot replace this. I got the regex, I got the global, comma.
Yeah.
Match. Just
the match is the substring itself that matched to that pattern. So in this case, so just so you can see, so our pattern is saying, hey, find me a substring or count as a match any substring that has an arbitrary number of alphanumeric characters. Okay, so that means that a space is not an alphanumeric. And in fact, a space has a special meaning in regex. It's, I think they use the W for the space. It's like or no, not W, it's S, I think. And anyways, so what it's saying is a match is any set of words, however many, or sorry, a set of characters, however many, okay? So that means that my match is going to be the substring that is found in my original string with that pattern. So in this case, just looking at this, we know that there's going to be two matches, right? Because we know that there's going to be this first group, which is a string of letters, arbitrarily long. And then I have a second group of characters, which are arbitrarily long. This space is why I'm going to see two matches and not one.
And that's because of the grouping.
And that's because of the grouping.
Cool. I think it clicked for me.
So now when we look at this, see how, oh, I didn't save. So let's do first and then second. So now when you look at the console, so the first iteration was that first grouping of characters. And then the second time this was called was on the second grouping.
Cool. Yeah, that console log on 3 helped a lot.
Cool.
Really.
Oh, and there's an extra space in there that wasn't supposed to be there. But yeah, this replace function is amazing. I would say replace and reduce are my 2 favorite functions. So yeah, lots of cool stuff you can do. So your homework is to go through this regex, because I didn't get to everything on this list, but what I hope I did is at least give you the concepts behind it, so that when you do these, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is just another way of expressing a type of pattern that I want to create. Like, these are just Lego pieces. Some are, when you see them, you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. So this is your homework.
Sweet.
It's really
Awesome.
fun because it's not hard. It's just fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that now I can actually understand it instead of just, I don't know.
Yeah, and you can then tell all your friends that you know how to use dot replace properly.
So is that the extent?
No one knows how to use this function, right? But now you guys do.
That's cool.
We're
pros.
I'm gonna go show everyone up. It's my style.
Do it. Go up to a hackathon.
Is that like the full extent though of regex's like doability? Like on that regex.com, like that's the whole
Those are all the building blocks, yeah.
Cool. That's what I meant.
Yeah, as far as I know, I've gone through that exercise several times, and it's pretty exhaustive, at least in terms of the tools they give you, and then it's just a matter of time and practice to like really get comfortable with what you can do with it. Like, there's some shit though that's like nuts. You can do some like crazy stuff with it, with regex, that I did not know was possible.
I think we're gonna have to have like little regex parties now or something.
Have like a regex battle.
How do you, Ben, how would you use regex in like a bash script?
In a bash script?
Yeah, have fun with that. I'm gonna peace out. It's a good.
I don't know.
Good breakaway for me there, Danny. Thanks. I get sucked in. I told myself I was gonna leave like 45 minutes ago. So I will see you dudes later. Thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, no problem, Emily. Have a good one. Good to see you. I honestly don't know. I know that Bash has like its own syntax for like matching stuff. I don't know if it's actually regex or if it's some like other type. I don't know, to be honest with you.
Okay, just thought I'd throw that one out there.
That would be worth. Yeah, that'd be worth looking into, because I know it exists. I just haven't had the need to do it really.
Yeah,
I've seen it. I just had
this function where, just like this was back in the early start of school, where it's like you were creating these folders for every assignment, and so I just like automated a little bit of that with like a quick function, but I wanted to change the name so that all the files didn't start with like a numbering system. But anyways, I think I know enough about regex now. I should be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Thanks to you. So appreciate it.
No problem. Word. Well, hopefully we'll see you next week.
All right.
I don't remember what next week is, but I'll look it up.
Well, this is a good one. Thanks again.
Yeah, dude. No problem. We'll see you.
All right. Bye.